In baseball's long history, many memorable World Series moments have thrilled fans and proved satisfying to non partial observers. From brilliant catches and timely stolen bases to walk-off home runs and clutch base hits. But in my mind, the greatest World Series of them all occurred 100 years ago in 1924. The 1924 World Series between the New York Giants and Washington Senators had everything you could possibly want from the Fall Classic. Closely contested games, big pitching matchups, and of course, who doesn't like an underdog story? The series pitted a juggernaut, the widely disliked New York Giants, against the upstart Washington Senators, a team no one expected to beat Babe Ruth and the New York Yankees for the American League pennant. 2 games went into extra innings, 3 were saved by relief pitchers, 4 games were decided by 1 run, and 2 skilled managers battled to outsmart each other. In a legendary 7th game, tied in the 9th inning, both managers sent their unrested ace pitcher to the mound for extra innings, all while the President of the United States watched from the grandstands. Let's talk about the greatest World Series ever, or at least the first modern World Series. In part 1 of this 3-part series, I argued that what made baseball great during the 1920s was the combination of surging offense and small ball tactics, such as the double steal or hit and run play. None other than Babe Ruth, the Sultan of SWAT, recorded 113 sacrifice bunts during his long career, and he stole home base 10 times. Players were less averse to getting called out trying to steal, and just generally, baseball games moved faster and were more exciting to see than what would become baseball of the 1950s. So it's 1924. The roaring 20s are in full swing, and American cities hummed with cultural and industrial vitality. With the end of spring training in Arkansas, Florida, Georgia, Louisiana, and California, major league teams made their way back to the northern cities. And no one really thought the Washington Senators had much of a chance to win the American League pennant. The New York Yankees had won pennants in 1921, 1922, and in 1923 they won their first World Series title against the Giants. The Yankees had fast become a powerhouse thanks to Jacob Ruppert, he's in the middle, owner of the Yankees, who had wisely acquired the services of Babe Ruth in 1920 and built a strong team around him managed by Miller Huggins. The Yankees were favored to win a 4th consecutive pennant in view of their strong pitching and the incomparable bat of Babe Ruth. To win again, the Yankees would have to outlast competitive ball clubs managed by 3 titans. Ty Cobb, whose lifetime batting average of .366 is unsurpassed, managed the Detroit Tigers. Tris Speaker, baseball's all-time leader in doubles, led the Cleveland Indians. And George Sisler, who twice batted over .400, managed the St. Louis Browns. In contrast, Baseball Magazine had the Washington Senators, also called the Nationals or Nats, finishing 7th out of 8 teams. The Nats were not regarded as a serious contender. Legendary pitcher Walter Johnson had struggled since 1920 with injuries, and more than a few observers thought the game's career leader in shutouts was past his prime at the age of 36. But Washington's owner, Clark Griffith, had been slowly building a championship roster. One of his most audacious moves was to name 27-year-old Bucky Harris the team's player-manager. Members of the press dubbed it Griffith's Folly, but the second baseman, Bucky Harris, was a smart baseball man and a natural leader. He wisely solicited the support of veteran players and cultivated an atmosphere of trust in the clubhouse. In the National League, the New York Giants were favored to win their 4th consecutive pennant thanks to a talented roster of young and old ball players. Manager John McGraw, or Muggsy, had won 9 pennants and 3 World Series titles since 1902. Not everyone liked the man some called the Little Napoleon, but just about everyone respected his baseball knowledge, his intensity, and McGraw's ability to motivate. McGraw was also a symbol of New York City's dominance. Going back to 1920, at least one team from New York had gone to the World Series, and it begged a question about the future. Would smaller cities be able to contend with the three New York City franchises and their greater fan bases and financial resources? On opening day, April 15th, Washington faced Connie Mack's Philadelphia Athletics. Walter Johnson pitched a 4-hit shutout, an auspicious beginning, and then beat the Yankees twice over the next 3 weeks. Johnson's fastball, though a tad slower than before, was still sharp and effective. But 6 weeks into the season, the Senators had 16 wins and 19 losses. Hardly a strong start. In fact, the big surprise at the end of May was Boston. No one expected the Red Sox to compete with the mighty Yankees for first place. And then it happened. The Senators exploded out of 6th place to capture first. At the end of June, the Senators made a statement by sweeping the Yankees at the newly built Yankee Stadium. No one expected it, perhaps not even the Senators themselves. Having slingshot themselves into first place, the question was, would they hold on to it? In July, Babe Ruth went on a 48-game tear in which he hit 20 home runs and batted .480. On August 15th, the Nats fell to 3rd place and trailed the Yankees by 2 games. With the Yankees passing Washington by, owner Clark Griffith made a bold move. He spent $35,000 to acquire outfielder Earl McNeely of the Pacific Coast League in early August. The Senators' owner, Clark Griffith, was all in. And I should add something. Griffith had beef with John McGraw. The two player managers had competed against each other since the 19th century, and Griffith wanted to win the pennant and beat the little Napoleon. On September 15th, the Yankees and Nationals were tied for first. This was a remarkable pennant race. But what explains the Senators' unexpected success? After all, in 1923, they finished 23.5 games back of the Yankees. Well, to begin with, the team, the Senators, had an undeniable grit and an offense that harkened back to the dead ball era. Fewer home runs, but more triples and sacrifice bunts. Babe Ruth hit 46 home runs in 1924, while Washington's players altogether hit a total of 22. The Nats demonstrated that there were other ways to win. In 1924, manager Bucky Harris deployed a new strategy by making use of relief pitchers. Frederick Firpo Marbury made 36 relief appearances and saved 15 games. In fact, he was the first great relief pitcher. The first to save 100 games, the first to relieve in 50 games, the first to make 300 relief appearances. In short, Firpo's talents were being used in a novel way by Bucky Harris. Marbury time is what fans and journalists spoke of when the reliever appeared late in the game, and Firpo Marbury made Walter Johnson better. Johnson, for his part, did not have to pitch a full 9 innings to win. The Nats pitching staff posted the lowest earned run average in the American League. It gave up the fewest home runs, and Walter Johnson won another ERA title in 1924. When the Senators clinched their first ever pennant at the end of the season, Calvin Coolidge invited the team to receive his personal congratulations at the White House. Sports writer Charlie Dryden had once famously quipped, "Washington, first in war, first in peace, and last in the American League." The long-suffering Senators had beaten the mighty Yankees. And they did it with a new manager under the age of 30. The fact that a team with veteran players took orders from a 20-something is no less remarkable today than it was in 1924. A younger boss isn't always someone the veterans trust or respect. And I'll make one more comment. Winning the pennant entitled each player to a percentage of World Series profits from the ticket sales, and that amount of money ranged from $3,000 to $6,000, a substantial windfall. That could buy several cars or a small house. There was great joy among Bucky Harris's Senators. What about the National League? Well, it had its own thrilling pennant race with the Giants in first place all season long and 3 clubs, the Cubs, Pirates, and Dodgers, chasing the defending champions. Heading into September, the NL pennant looked up for grabs, with Pittsburgh and Brooklyn nipping at the Giants' heels. The Pirates had a phenomenal infield composed of Pie Trainer Glenn Smith and Rabbit Marinville, while the Dodgers possessed 2 legendary arms, Burley Grimes of spitballing fame and Dazzy Vance, who put up historic numbers in 1924. He started 35 games, completed 30, and won 28 of those contests. The Dodgers had an ace. Down the stretch, the Giants held on to first place thanks to strong pitching and the potent bats of 3 Hall of Fame inductees, Frankie Frisch, Ross Youngs, and George Kelly. In the end, the Giants outlasted their rivals and finished ahead of Brooklyn, but corruption would taint New York's 4th consecutive pennant. On the second last game of the season, Giants utility outfielder Jimmy O'Connell approached Phillies shortstop Heine Sand and offered him $500 if he would avoid, quote, bearing down hard on us today. In other words, we'll give you money not to make a few plays at shortstop. Well, Heine Sand rejected O'Connell's offer and reported what had happened to his manager, who then passed the information up to baseball commissioner Kennesaw Mountain Landis. Landis investigated. He hauled O'Connell into his office and confronted the outfielder. "Did you attempt to bribe Heine Sand?" "Yes," O'Connell responded. "He told the truth." Not only that, O'Connell revealed that his coach, Cozy Dolan, had put him up to it. And 3 Giants stars, Frankie Frisch, Ross Youngs, and George Kelly, knew about the bribe attempt. Ultimately, Landis banished O'Connell and Dolan from Major League Baseball, but he did not bother to interview McGraw. As for Frisch, Youngs, and Kelly, each man denied knowledge of the bribe and were not punished. Here's what I think. John McGraw would have known whether his old friend and loyal lieutenant Cozy Dolan had instructed O'Donnell to offer a bribe. Landis, it would seem, wanted to contain the damage. He didn't want the World Series marred by dishonest activities of more than a few Giants, and certainly not its star players or well-known manager. Outside of Manhattan, the whole country hoped for a Senators' victory in the World Series. So it's Game 1. It's the Fall Classic, the first World Series in Washington, D.C. Minnie Johnson, Walter Johnson's mother, traveled to the Capitol and sat in the grandstands with her daughter-in-law, Hazel. She was about to see her son pitch for the first time in the big leagues. President Calvin Coolidge threw out the first pitch and settled into his box seat. The World Series had finally come to the American capital. Walter Johnson and Giants ace Artie Neft dueled for 12 long innings. Johnson struck out 12 Giants and tied a major league record, but Neft proved better. In the 12th inning, Johnson gave up 2 runs. Washington then threatened in the bottom of the 12th, scoring once, but ultimately leaving the tying run on third base. In Game 2, Washington scored 3 runs in the first 5 innings. Goose Goslin and Bucky Harris hit home runs, but the Giants fought back in the final 3 frames to tie the game. And in the bottom of the 9th, Roger Peckinpah doubled to score Joe Judge, sending the series back to New York City tied up. One thing to mention here is that Furpo Marbury was invincible out of the bullpen in Game 2. For Game 3, John McGraw used 3 different pitchers to protect his lead in the 9th inning: Rosie Ryan, Cloud Jonard, and Artie Neff. This was one highly modern aspect of the postseason, in an era before the closer role had developed or managers were likely to use multiple pitchers to face individual batters in a single inning. In Game 4, the Nats evened the series and Furpo Marbury recorded his second save. To everyone's surprise, Walter Johnson pitched poorly in Game 5. He didn't have a sharp fastball and got shelled for 15 hits. Now the Giants needed one more win for a World Series title, while Washington needed 2. The Nats had their backs up against the wall. Back in Washington for Game 6, Bucky Harris drove in 2 runs for a big victory as the Nats forced a deciding 7th game. Both managers mulled their options. Bucky Harris wanted to contain the bat of Hall of Fame left-hander Bill Terry, who was hitting .429 with one homer in the series. To accomplish that goal, Harris started right-hander Curly Ogden in Game 7, inviting John McGraw to place Bill Terry in the lineup. When McGraw did start Terry, Bucky Harris promptly replaced Ogden with his left-handed pitcher, George Mogridge. The strategy to contain Terry worked, and Harris hit a homer in the 4th inning of Game 7 to give the Nats a 1-0 lead. But the Giants fought back. They scored 3 runs in the 6th inning and took the lead. Relievers Virgil Barnes and Firpo Marbury were flawless through the top of the 8th, but in the bottom of the 8th inning, Washington scored 1 run and loaded the bases. In one of the biggest hits of World Series history, manager Bucky Harris singled to left and scored 2 teammates. The game was now tied 3-3 in the 9th inning, and John McGraw decided to bring in Artie Neff, his unrested ace who had pitched the day before. Meanwhile, Bucky Harris ordered Walter Johnson to start warming up. The anxious hometown crowd must have wondered all of the same things. Was Johnson's confidence shot after getting shelled in Game 5? Would he command his fastball? Was he tired? Retired Giant Christy Mathewson, watching from the grandstands, thought Bucky Harris shouldn't be placing such a responsibility on the shoulders of his friend Walter Johnson. Well, for the next 3 innings, 9, 10, and 11, Walter Johnson and Artie Neff kept everyone scoreless. By the 12th inning, shadows and dim light warranted a belief that umpires were about to call the game a tie. After Walter Johnson pitched another scoreless inning, his team prepared for what would almost certainly be its last at-bat. The inning started with a pop-out. Then things got interesting. The Giants' poor defense, possibly influenced by the dim light, put runners at first and second. McGraw positioned third baseman Freddie Lindstrom in to make the double play, and Earl McNeely hit a ball that took an unexpected bounce past Lindstrom. Muddy Rule, the catcher, ran home. Washington, D.C. erupted into jubilant celebration, from tension to catharsis. 20,000 fans streamed onto the field. City celebrations occurred all night long. Horns, confetti, gunfire. It was bedlam in the nation's capital. President Coolidge sent his congratulations to Walter Johnson and Bucky Harris. The soft-spoken, emotionally reserved Walter Johnson had delivered a big performance. 27-year-old Bucky Harris had tied the game and outmaneuvered the legendary John McGraw. Commissioner Landis called it the greatest game ever played. The 1924 World Series, whether or not it was the greatest series ever, was definitely a remarkable underdog story and a modern fall classic that featured 9 home runs, the strategic use of relief pitchers, and managers who deployed their ace pitchers on short rest during the dramatic finale. It was, in most respects, a modern World Series. And yet, it had that je ne sais quoi of 1920s baseball. Game 7 could have ended in a tie, requiring a game the next day. Hey, if you like this video, check out the one I did about Kirk Gibson's World Series home run in 1988. And in the comments, let me know which World Series you think had the most dramatic Game 7 finale. And thanks for watching.